Arizona's recent push to legalize certain forms of discrimination against gays and lesbians was a big story. And in reporting it, some journalists made their sympathies clear. But if it felt jarring to see the media choose sides, it shouldn't have, because it's been happening for years. In a special broadcast 45 years ago, legendary newsman Walter Cronkite took to the CBS airwaves and declared the Vietnam War unwinnable.
To say that we are mired in stalemate seems the only realistic, if unsatisfactory, conclusion.
At the time, watching an objective journalist pass judgment on the news of the day was stunning. But since then, it's become more common.
If you were waiting for the day that global warming would change the world, that day is here.
Back in 2006, CBS's Scott Pelley said he wouldn't give climate change skeptics airtime, asking, "If I do an interview with Elie Wiesel, am I required as a journalist to find a Holocaust denier?"
To the chapel.
And now there's gay rights. As public attitudes rapidly shift on homosexuality, the media is shifting too, essentially embracing the cause.
You did tell everyone about Amber and about your relationship, and it was, I hope that was a good experience.
And when CNN's Anderson Cooper recently spoke with an Arizona legislator about a bill that would have allowed some anti-gay discrimination, it was more interrogation than interview.
This bill is preemptive to protect priests.
You can't give me one example of this actually happening.
No, I can't.
And Cooper wasn't the only CNN journalist debating the Arizona bill rather than reporting on it.
Tell me that you're not analogizing burning a Koran or the KKK with gay marriage.
Clearly, journalistic detachment has its limits. That's good news if you're on the same side, bad news if you're not. So have the rules changed when it comes to covering gay rights? Here to hash it out are George Donnelly of the Boston Business Journal, Kara Miller of WGBH News, Callie Crossley also of WGBH News, and Dan Kennedy of Northeastern University. What do you think, George? I mean, gay rights and climate change are kind of completely different things.
Right.
You know, one is scientifically, factually proven. The other one is still, not that it necessarily should be, but a matter of social opinion.
Well, I think we're getting to that point where it's almost taken for granted. But again, it's only legal, I think, in 17 states. And so I think we're looking at a situation where there's a ways to go. I think this Arizona situation was maybe not the best litmus test because it was so sensational and so over the top that it made it a lot easier for the media to take sides. I think in more conventional situations, I think they would pretty much, play it down the middle. I mean, there would be much more of an inclination to play it down the middle.
In a way, it's not wrong to describe something the way it is. I don't know that I would call this bill anti-gay if I was, writing the newspaper article about it. But I think a lot of people who would deny services to gay people through this Arizona bill, if it had been approved, would say they're not. They are anti-gay. I mean, I don't think they would be hiding it necessarily. I think it's probably better to say this is a denial of service to gay people, but in some ways that is anti-gay. And I actually think some of the examples that were given in terms of that Vietnam is a stalemate, I don't know that that's something that's necessarily even an opinion. What if Vietnam is a stalemate? Is there a point at which Vietnam is a stalemate?
It was shocking at the time. You probably weren't around, but trust me.
But I just think there are things that we think of as opinion, and I think, in fact, when you talk about this bill as anti-gay, I don't know that doesn't get to actually what the truth of the bill is.
Well, as I understand, the impact of Walter Cronkite was, he was the most trusted man. We all looked at that newscast, or most Americans looked at that newscast, and for him to make any statement about anything would have been, mind-blowing for people. So the fact that this came after his trip to Vietnam, when he realized, wait a minute, a lot of what we've been reporting sort of in a small way, this happens to be true, so I'm going to say it. So that's the end of that. This is an inside baseball distinction, but an Anderson Cooper and even a Chris Cuomo they have room to debate if they want to. So what you want to make certain of, the people who are actually reporting those stories on the ground are not doing what Anderson, and I actually didn't see that. They laid out what the case was. So I would have to say, having said all of that, however, 58% in the most recent poll, people are like, okay, what are we talking about? I'm supporting same-sex marriage. And along with it, I have shifted my views about, gays and homosexuals and their place in our society. So I don't think that even in so-called straight reporting, it's wrong to say that, because we've got the evidence from the people.
There's a concept known as Hallan spheres, and I thought of this.
Oh boy!
I thought of this when I knew we were going to be talking about this topic, and the idea is that there's a sphere of consensus, and that's the stuff we all agree on. The sun rises in the east, and then there's a sphere of deviance, and that. The ultimate example of that would be Holocaust denial. Nobody gives that any airtime. And we work everything out somewhere between those two. And I think that what we're beginning to see here is, like the Vietnam War, like civil rights, like a lot of other things, the debate over gay rights and same-sex marriage is starting to move from the area where it's a legitimate topic of debate, and it's moving into the sphere of deviance, essentially.
Okay, not to open a whole can of worms here, but even this discussion about the South Boston parade. I mean, the Supreme Judicial Court ruled that they can exercise their right and have whoever they want in the parade, so the gays people don't necessarily have the right to march. I feel like the media has taken a side, even though this group has said all along no advocacy group is allowed to participate. So we're like I feel like the media is really pushing for the rights of this group to march, but no advocacy group is allowed to march. Yet the media has embraced the cause of gay rights to march.
Yeah, they have, and I think it goes to this sphere of deviance. It's become seen as simply being completely unacceptable to take a stand that would seem as being against gay rights.
But I also have to say that Mass Equality put itself forward to test this. This has been a test every year since it's been up. This is an ongoing issue with that parade and this particular advocacy. So that's why we're talking about it.
I also think that the straight news writers, the people who are writing about this in the Boston Globe, for example, the parade, I don't think they're taking sides. I think in a lot of ways it feels like people are taking sides because everybody who is allowed to express any sort of opinion in the media is on exactly the same side.
And maybe because the deviant's name is Wacko.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that.